Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. Hey there, Bravehearts, Urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters, and welcome to an Abracadabra pop up for Monday, June 22nd, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. And it's interesting that we are here, or that I'm here, and you'll be here whenever you find yourself in front of this message. Was actually preparing for the next installment for the keynotes to self, tipping the hourglass. And as I have begun to do, I shuffle cards um, as a practice of in what can I call it? I use it as an energetic tool. And so I think I've may mentioned numerous times, so I'll mention it again, that I seem to be getting into the habit of shuffling cards the way that many will handle a stress ball or something else that they tend to uh, channel their quote unquote mindless energies into. And so if I'm watching or listening to a lecture, or if I am editing or reading through, I'll just, even if they're playing cards, doesn't necessarily have to be tarot cards, but I will sometimes, without even really noticing it, pick up a deck and just start shuffling them. Well, that's what happened this morning as I was getting ready for the next installment. And when a group of cards pop out all together, I have been led to begin considering them abracadabra pop ups. Well, that is what just happened. And almost instantly, this major surge, and I call it a major surge because I've been dealing with these pockets of energy since Friday evening. And have been uh, quite intuitively drawn to taking notes and using them as dot connectors as I learn how to uh, document my daily unfoldings around new moons and full moons. And so it's a little bit more than just me tracking my lunar cycles. A lot of that has to do with me now tapping into the spaces of the moon being in my first house, as well as, hang on, let me pull my notes out that are directly associated with what I'm talking about. So, specifically with regards to, why can't I find it? Happens every time. My moon being in the first house, my Pluto being in the first house, as well as um, my Pluto in Libra at 2 degrees, my Chiron in Aries at 9 degrees, and my North Node in Aquarius at 5 degrees, also in my fifth house. And so, talk about a complicated spread. And this is just a small cluster of the overall snapshot that's housed inside of my birth chart. Slowly but surely, I've been noticing certain cocktails, if you will, of archetypal chemistry that dwells inside my birth chart, which directly influences me as a unique being and the conductor of the symphony of my moods and my ebbs and flows and swings of energetic involvement. With that said, my lunation influence is a bit different, as with everyone's, but it's different from what would be considered the norm. And so, because of that, I have been having these hunches to track certain episodes. And it's really intriguing because they are episodes that conventional medicine would want to medically suppress. The cocktail of these signature episodes have also been the endorser of me in pursuit of depth psychology as well as mystic psychology and everything that surrounds the pockets of metaphysical nuance in day to day social or slightly antisocial living. And I don't mean antisocial as in you don't feel like being bothered with nobody or you want to run around town and kill up folk. I ain't talking about that part. I'm talking about the part where it's more so that it has to make sense in order for you to involve yourself with the other energies of other human beings. It has to make sense. Your social ramifications or your social interactions have to make sense. I am honestly one that play well by myself. I have enough imaginary friends. I actually have an entire tribe of imaginary friends that have been with me since the traumas of childhood, and they have grown with me and matured with me. They have literally been in my head to say make a left, and by golly wow, it pans out that making that left was the best thing ever. Or when they said make a left and I actually made a right, they were available to hold my hand and calmly explain to me why the making a right was such a bonehead choice. And so, in summary, it's what the oracle was saying to Neo when she pointed to the plaque above the entrance that said Temet Nos. As a human being, as a source of celestial power dressed in flesh, we come into this realm into what I'm finding out many are considering Earth University, third dimension college, third dimension community college. We are entering into this realm so that we may be in soul school, so that we may go through the levels of learning about ourselves. To metnos means to know thyself. It means, like what the oracle said, I can't tell you you're the one. Only you can tell you you're the one. And so I'll go further to say that we can only know what it is that our oneness means is if we begin to court self. And in my honest and most humble opinion, I believe that our courtships with others tend to be so fragile and mangled because we very rarely take time to know self, to love self. And so, uh, we're going to get into these cards. And I hadn't even taken a moment to meditate on the cards. So, with me still being inside of my learning curves around the messages through the cards, which is if we're going to talk about within specific language or terms of language, it is known as cartomancy, meaning that you search the cards to come up and decode um, messages that dwell in non-physical spaces and manifested into physical spaces. And so right now I am just mindlessly shuffling through the Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck to get a message to um, guide us through this pop-up. I also have quite a bit of uh, pieces of information that will be uh, woven into the third installment of the keynotes to self, tipping of the hourglass. I can't remember, is it tipping of the hourglass or is it just tipping the hourglass? I think it's tipping of the hourglass. No, tipping the hourglass. Okay. So I'm gonna drop some of that in here as well, just to solidify the context for the conversation. So the first thing is, I would like to direct your attention, if you will, to the intersection between Storyville and Joyville. And if you're part of the DMV, which is Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, more so the uh, southern side of Prince George's County, Maryland, then you know that there is a shopping center called Woodmore. And there's been a great debate around the area of the city that it's considered. So, antiquated PG County, it would be considered Landover, Maryland. And the debate has been around the fact that it's now considered Lanham. And the city historians will say that it is honestly in between Largo and Kitland, Maryland. And two ticks from the football stadium. The football, I'm just going to say it's the Redskins Stadium because I don't really honestly know what its proper name is. But it's right there, right in the nook of things. Now, I make mention of that because when you roll up into the complex of this particular shopping center, there are, okay, so we have three cards that's going to guide our session. Um, let's see. Interesting. Now, this is, okay, so for the last couple of recordings, these two cards, the Great Teacher and the White Witch, they have been coming up in every installment, every recording. This is amazing because now I am noticing a pattern, a theme with the way these cards are showing up. Okay, we'll get back to Woodmore in a minute. Okay, so the first card is the Great Teacher. Learn from spiritual experiences. Next card is Autumn. Release the old and rest. And the last card is the White Witch. Be the light. So let's keep that in our minds while we tap into the intersection between Storyville and Joyville. Okay, so what came to mind is how when you're rolling up into the complex of the shopping center, there's a throughway where you can either make a right that will take you into townhomes, or you make the left, which will take you into the shopping center. So we're going to say that Storyville is the right where you go into, of course, if you live there or if you're visiting, into the homes. And symbolically, the home is the heart, which is the fourth chakra. If you make a left, you're going into the shopping center, where most often, if you're making a left, that means you have the means, the financial footing to go and shop, or at least you are browsing for the future opportunity to shop, to consume, to take part in, to accumulate that which you either need or desire. At this intersection of Storyville and Joyville, there will be times where, regardless if you make the left or the right, that you will be within a spectrum of moods, which is influenced by the energies that either surround the outer you or are permeating within the inner you. Either way, you are a conduit of energy. With all of that said, the effects of energies in and around me during peak moments of lunation cycles when the moon is either waxing or waning, ebbing or flowing, when it's at its highest, in its fluidity, or in its deepest. And I can't really equate anything to that right now, but whether it's high or low, you'll always be in communion with self. So, most often, when you are inside of a to met nose phase, when you are knee deep in knowing thyself, more than likely you will be making a right into your home space, into your heart space. And when you're making a left, you are ascribing to be out with others, or at least intermingling within spaces that are uh, heavily packed with other energies than those of yourself and within your inner circles. So inside of Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy, on page 158, she speaks a lot about escaping shame, or should I say, she goes into intricate detail about escaping shame. Now, I was already digging into this piece of the book for the um, supporting evidence for installment 3 for the keynotes to self. So I'm going to read two small passages from page 160 and 161. In the absence of wealth's authenticity, they use these to paint a picture of success to avoid the embarrassment they believe they will experience if the world knew their true circumstances. The facade wears thin in the face of living paycheck to paycheck, renting instead of owning, following instead of leading, and struggling to just keep the lights on. It is a result of a people who have been sold a bill of goods by America. The bill of goods that clothing, accessories, cars, and all manner of material possessions define their worth. In truth, this bill of goods is a torrent of lies wrapped in a carefully manufactured advertisement, distributed and sold to them at the price far too exuberant to measure. I am a member of the Harry Potter Alliance for the DC chapter. And I got a message earlier today that put me on notice about the hostings of what they call imagination sessions. And I've spoken, but not in detail, just making mention actually of me being an ambassador of Imagineering. And so that's one of the things that I am striving to build momentum around within the Washington, D.C. area, as well as the New Orleans area, which is my granddad's uh, birth vibes, the region of my granddad's birth vibes, as well as the Tampa Bay, Florida Keys area, which is my grandma's region of birth vibes. So within these three areas is a energetic triangle, if you will, of not only familiar blood vibes, but also regional blood vibes, which goes into, uh, if one lets it, if one chooses to connect the intention, can begin to harness a certain concept around how one can comprehend or use tools to elevate its perceptions or shift its paradigms. There's been really no secret that most of the outlets that we tap into are not giving us the honest, authentic information that they have cloaked as news. And it gets a bit tricky, and I know that it does because we honestly for generations have been given these prefabricated notifications and memorandums and commentary that have made us habitually addicted to what they are saying versus what we know to be. And what I mean by that is, on many occasions, what has been presented on the local news has not been the way that it actually went down inside the neighborhoods or the corridors of the tribe, the regional corridors of the tribe. And in some cases, honestly conflicting, like contrary stories to what the masses is being told versus what's actually going down in the trenches on the ground within the grassroots. And it almost seems like a David and Goliath type of scenario because who can go and retrack and retrace all of that which everyone is consuming intellectually and or emotionally. And when I say that the producers, the manufacturers of certain intellectual or emotional triggers have been doing this for centuries, they've been doing it for centuries. So let's tap into the pocket of Storyville. I am a coach of intuitive studies and narratology. And narratology is really a wonderfully scientific word for narrative and all that consumes it and the arts and science of narrative. I have a mystical component to me. And I believe it has everything to do with the fact that the moon is in my first house, as well as my the moon. I have a blah, 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 blah. Let me slow down. Okay, I was about to get really excited. Okay, my my trifecta with regards to my birth chart is my Capricorn sun, my Virgo moon, and my Virgo ascendant. So the fact that I have a Virgo moon, which is attached to Mercury, meaning that within my communications, not only do I strive for perfection inside of my communications, but I also dig deep into the root. I dig deep into that which is below the sea level, below the SEE level. I am always tapping into that which cannot be readily seen. And I'm always talking about the shadows and the sharpening of night vision when it comes to the courtship with self. Why? Because on the surface, especially for folks that look like me, the message always shows up that somehow uh, acts as kryptonite towards authenticity and towards that which is genuinely so. And it sends mixed messages. And that seeps into or bleeds into the fabrics of relationships and trusts and bonds and longevity and legacy building and lifelong lessons. It shrouds all that is tried and true or that should be. So the mystical side to me has been leading me down a path and honestly been provoking me to step outside of my comfort zone and speak on a more public summit about quite a bit that I've been speaking to my imaginary friends for years about. One of the more major things is to dispel this thing when it comes to speaking to yourself or even having imaginary friends. Why? Because most of the time, by the time we get into this thing called adulthood, those two things are used to shame and blame. And they've been so weaponized that folks would actually believe that it's better for me to talk to someone outside of myself versus someone inside of myself. And quite honestly, taking on that practice is like growing strawberries in the cement. It's like trying to grow anything outside of its natural habitat. And that's not saying that it can't happen. I've seen quite a bit of vegetation and green life sprout up through cement. So it's not impossible, but it's not natural. Meaning that the less natural it is, the less power, the less non physical power it has. I don't particularly think that I would have the vibrant nutrient of a well incubated, naturally grown strawberry than I would with one that had to fight its way up through cement. Probably wouldn't even taste all that well. Probably be all bruised and battered. Not all that attractive, physically and energetically. And it probably will go through some type of massive solar plexus trauma for being rejected and unwanted, knowing it does not belong in this bed of cement. And quite honestly, I do not know of many strawberries that would actually reach the surface. They would probably die out before they ever got a chance to emerge. So before we tap into the cards, I want to tell you a little bit about my yesterday. Well, okay, so it's Monday, June 22nd. I believe I said that already. So my Saturday night and all of my Sunday. So all of yesterday in high concentration. And I know it had a lot to do with the solar eclipse. Has a fit, a whole lot to do with the new moon, Cancer, 0 degrees. Everything to do with the moon and Pluto being in my first house. And just so we clear, let me just pop into the conversation what goes on with regards to the first house. So the first house is ruled by Aries, and it's all about one's self-awareness, it's star power, it's challenging assignments, it's self-development, and it's personal growth, and sometimes it's professional growth if in fact if in fact one's professional practices has anything to do with star power, self-awareness, self-development, etc., etc. Being an intuitive coach has everything to do with me attracting the clients um, that are destined to be offered my help. And that's just a real complicated way of saying that I don't advertise and I do not go looking for random clients. Usually they bump into me, and they bump into me with a specific need to clear up something, to be uh, granted comprehension around something that is deep, that is shadowy, that is seemingly damn near impossible, that is achy, that is breaky, that is achy breaky, and is most often dealing with the heart. Now, the alignment, when we come into this third dimensional soul university type realm, to be a graduate all depends on the balance between the head and the heart, the balance between what one thinks and what one feels. The way this realm is set up, because it is ultra physical, it's mostly going to be permeating around the way one thinks. And it's going to, just out of its natural essence, going to be suppressing that which one feels. And so we've entered into this pocket of energy that is giving a boost, if you will, that is honestly going to those that ache and hurt so fucking much. And it's sitting with them. It's being the comfy sofa coach to be able to just just open up the valve and let it all out with no judgment. All judgments are being asked to be suspended so that it may reverse this arrested development around the balance between what one thinks and how one feels. We are having this influx, this flow of aid within energetic values from the heavy hitters, mind you. Saturn is in presence, Jupiter is in presence, Uranus is in presence, Pluto is in presence, the moon is in presence, Venus is in presence, the sun, yeah, they are here. They are here. Now remember though, they are coming in their authentic characteristics, so you can't pick and choose how they show up, but you can pick and choose how you engage with them. But they are leaving all sorts of signs and signals and synchronicities to say, we are here. Use us so that you may grow, you may elevate, you may shift paradigms, you may get a new prescription around the lens by which you view you and others as this thing called time unfolds. And it's often said, you may not like what you hear, and it might not be what you want to hear, but trust and believe it's going to be what you need to hear. And if you do not like dress it up in complaint, that there's actually a super complimentary value to the engagement, to the acquaintance of this news or this message or the undoing of centuries or generations of conditioning. Yeah, it might hurt a little bit. It might even hurt a whole lot. It might even have you cry out, what the fuck? And by all means, if that's what you feel like you need to do it. So here is my contribution to the Storyville Pocket in conjunction to this particular conversation, this abracadabra pop up. As we are just across the threshold inside of the energies presented by this annular solar eclipse, this Cancer at 0 degrees, this full of emotional, motherly nectar. Like literally, Big Mama is saying, baby, come on in the house, wash the world off you, and sit down at the table. Let's talk and let's eat. Let's commune. So, if you're familiar, even in the least bit, with the Vampire Diaries, then for one, that means that you are not spooked away from the conventional means of what mainstream would call evil. That's first and foremost, which puts you in the category of all three of being either a Braveheart, a Urbanite, or Coach Mad Hatter. And when you're able to wear all three badges, then more than likely you'll be at the table longer. Your conversations will be extended just because naturally of the answers that you seek. So if you're anything like me and you dwell inside of these magical spaces, hunting and seeking and striving for the coding mechanisms to not only be able to identify that which has been hidden, but to be able to fluently decode it, translate it. And then if you live in your heart spaces in comfort, you're going to automatically want to share it with others. That's just the side effect of this thing. So I am now tapping into season 5. And there is a string of episodes that is unfolding when Bonnie and Damon are in a different time loop. They are stuck in, hold on, because I actually looked it up. I wanted to know the significance of what was going down. Okay, so they are stuck in a time loop that re occurs that okay, it's the example of Groundhog Day. So they are stuck on May 10th, 1994. Now, when it first came up in the episode, it went past me. And this was about, I want to say, 2 or 3 days before the energies of this eclipse uh, wound in. But then by another couple of episodes, May 10th, 1994 came up again. Now, my daughter was born in 1994. 1994 was a bittersweet year. So I got the invitation. I got the intuitive invitation. Go look up May 10th, 1994. See what was going on that day. And lo and behold, an annular solar eclipse occurred at the moon's descending node of the orbit on Tuesday, May 10th, 1994. It was visible over a wide swath of North America. And I'm just scrolling through because I'm not getting ready to read. If you want to look it up, trust me when I say it's here. It's all here for your taking. It will honestly accommodate your choice and wanting to know more. Now, what struck me as magical was the Vampire Diaries was a um, an epic of the year 2012. So it's been out for some time. What's also magical about it is how many times I had uh, shunned away. Well, not even shunned, but just wasn't really interested in it. And I'll say really through the Netflix portal. So just scrolling through movies, scrolling through series, just scrolling and scrolling, and so many times it kept coming up, kept coming up. I was like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. But then I want to say about 6 months ago, I got introduced to the originals. That is a spin-off of the Vampire Diaries. And I know I'm going the scenic route with all that, but please bear with me. It will connect in a moment. It'll come full circle in just a moment. So, I tapped into the original series mainly because it was connected to New Orleans and me wanting to feel closer to the blood vibes of my granddad's region and just listen to the language of some people. And that series done very well with showing the inside architecture of some of the more older models inside of New Orleans. I've been a lover of homestead architecture for a long time. One of my pastimes is to look in and out of home structures. So I am, and not more so about the decor um, of the furnishings, but I love that too, especially when it's done in a tranquil, more pleasing way. But the bones of the structure of the house and how it flows uh, in creativity for the healing mechanisms of its inhabitants. So I've always had a conjunctive nature to home economics and all that goes on inside of a home. New Orleans has some of the most intriguing structures that I've ever seen, as well as anything that was built inside of the uh, Romance and Renaissance era, or like the Deep South plantation structures. I also know that all depending on the dwelling, it has the capacity to maintain energies inside of certain time loops. Me being a Capricorn, I'm very sensitive to time. to either to the point where I notice where it's speeding up or it's slowing down. And it really is a message to me when I lose track of it altogether. I know that I'm in the presence of other beings when and I'm well other celestial entities when I lose track of time. It's an amazing thing what my awareness around time does to me, or the lack of. So when it clicked in that not only was I queuing in to this string of episodes around an annular solar eclipse, it gave me this primal notion to begin jotting down certain things around what I would consider clues or cues and decoding tools. So here's one thing that struck out to me in association with my personal power and my own unique travels through time. The physical space, meaning the social ramifications around Bonnie and Damon and all the people who they were associated with. Now they travel in the same group of people. So within the dynamics of their cluster of soul tribe or social tribe, so much stuff was going down. And when I say that their lives were chaotic on a daily basis, every fucking day something was going down major that they would have to collaborate to deal with, to the point where they were collaborating with people they honestly did not fuck with. They ain't like them. Some of them wanted to kill each other, but they realized for the greater good, if they did not suspend certain judgments and tap into that lens that highlighted where they connected, that all of it was going to go to shit. All of it. So it really became bigger than them. It became this, you know what? I'm real fucked up with you for this, that, and the third. But if we don't like sit around this table and release the sassiness, release the sarcasm, release the shame, release the guilt, if we don't release all of that shit and focus on that which honestly matters, ain't none of us gonna be here tomorrow to talk about it. So Bonnie is what's considered in the storyline a Bennett witch. And remember, this is the Vampire Diaries. So we have witches, we have oracles, we have vampires, we have wolves, we have regular people, we have non believing people, we have hunters. So it's a well balanced depiction of all the different species of beings that could permeate within a regional space. So granted, there are moments of prejudice, there are moments of class and creed, and there's moments of historical um, what's the word, entitlement, and so it's and uh, what am I thinking? I can see it, but that that plantation richness or wealth and the just the regular mundane worker bee. So it's a real good balance of all that are involved. Everyone is represented, and so Bonnie, and she's a black girl, which I felt was definitely an honorarium to some of the things that I am uh, identifying as I begin to, as not begin, but as I continue to mature and latch on to my individuation process. But the interesting thing about it is, and I have been saying this from the beginning, from season one, episode one, I have been saying that Bonnie being a black girl and it being depicted that not only was she ignorant in her witchiness or in her family's legacy and heirlooms, but she literally had power dwelling inside of her that where her ignorance became so fucking costly that her not understanding the power that she had at her fingertips is some of the reasons why her and her family and her friends were in traumatic turmoil, because she didn't know she had power to offset or counteract some of the shit that they were getting like just bombarded with. She honestly had a natural essence that would have made everybody step the fuck back. But she didn't know. She had no idea that this dwelled inside of her. And from that moment, I continue to contemplate over this thing where it says ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is costly as fuck. And her grandmother was constantly trying to educate her and get her to see this and introduce her to this and leave her with books and she wasn't having none of that. She was a sassy ass teenager with a lot of white friends, and that's all she fucking cared about. And I'm not saying this in a hateful racial context. But I am gonna be real with this shit. Shout out to brother Bobby Hemming. And speak it how I see it. And and let me just add in here just to make, because I feel my tone of voice getting sharp. So let me just pop this into the conversation. Bonnie's white friends were not the problem, because they honestly loved Bonnie. So we're not talking about Bonnie versus them. No, I'm talking about in the cluster of love, how her friends would have also been protected from certain things that were coming up against them that she could have used to protect those that she genuinely loved and who genuinely loved her. I remember stating this a couple of recordings back. I can't really speak in terms of divide and conquer race relations because the mixture is so tricky right now. I am honestly speaking to the non physical vibrations of folk. I am speaking in terms of mentality, personality, and emotionality. That's what I speak to. So, I digress. And we're going to get back to May 10th, 1994, which was a special time looping that, come to find out, Bonnie and Damon got sucked into because of all of the shit that was going down. And so when they met around the round table and they decided to suspend judgment and bury hatchets and really come together for the overall good of the entire region, they discovered that there was a way. Oh, and let me just say this real quick. So Bonnie stood as the anchor. Bonnie stands as the anchor with, she has one side of her being in the um, non-physical world and the front side of her being in the physical world. So she's in physical embodiment, but she can turn her she can turn her sights so that she can commune and be in conversation with those that have crossed over, those who have transcended out of physical embodiment. So then she found out being the anchor means that each and every magical or quote unquote superhuman extraterrestrial being that's within the physical space, when it sheds its flesh, it goes through her. So it's like she is the doorway to the non physical realm. So they all have to pass through her when whatever happens to them sheds them of their flesh, making them quote unquote spiritual. They now are, yeah, they're without embodiment. Well, lo and behold, they decide to do this spell that they are figuring is going to wipe slates clean and balance out all of the fuckery that's going on, and bring some type of peace and tranquility back into their physical spaces. Well, what they didn't realize was that the act of this happening through Bonnie. Oh, let me say this. So, Bonnie's grandma, she dies a couple seasons back, but Bonnie has been able to commune with her, um, because Bonnie's the anchor. So, when the pressures of their plan begin to unfold, Bonnie and Damon gets caught. They're the only two out of their entire friendship circle that gets caught in liminal space, and they are not able to cross completely back over into the physical world. Now, I will say this: on a regular day, Bonnie and Damon are arch enemies. They cannot stand each other. Vampire and witches don't get along. You know, the only reason that's keeping Bonnie from killing Damon or Damon from killing Bonnie is because they have friends that they love mutually. This mutual love. I'm telling you, that's going to be the key that unlocks so much comprehension around what we are dealing with these days. Mutual love is going to save the day. And so they are the two that are caught within this liminal space. And something that I wasn't even expecting, when the bright light came to uh, disintegrate them, if you will, they locked hands. They locked hands, which thrust them into the May 10th, 1994. Now, on the onset, that would seem like a bad thing because they had to find their way inside of this unfamiliar time loop. But the interesting thing about it is, what they found out was that this was a pocket loop that Bonnie's grandma from the non-physical space, aka our ancestors. She was working her juju mojo within the non-physical spaces, calling in favors, making some arrangements because she had the foresight to see that something was going down and Bonnie needed to be saved because she was the anchor between the physical space and the non-physical space. Bonnie and Damon came to find out that if they did not link hands, Damon would have been fucking disintegrated without not even fucking evidence that he ever existed. Because Bonnie's grandma had made that pocket specifically for her to be thrust into, knowing that she would have the power to find her way back to where she needed to be through the links and the vibrations and all of that, that was associated with her witchy knowledge, but as well as her social knowledge. Her love strings was going to eventually guide her back to the physical realm, time and space where she was supposed to be. So Damon and Bonnie spends quite a lot of time in this time loop. Now, on the regular realm where time just flows like now, like us in the 3D, everyone is thinking that Bonnie and Damon are dead. Like, so they mourn them, they have services for them. And the intriguing part about it is that Bonnie and Damon can still see or be intertwined in spaces with their friends and family. They just couldn't touch them or speak to them. They were of a different time loop. So it gets complicated for a while. I'll condense the story to say that they find a way to enter back into their regular time and space. Fuckery happens, and Damon makes it back into the three dimension, but Bonnie is still in this crazy May 10th, 1994 time loop. And she's there by herself, for a while. So she's inside of this space um, that looks exactly the way the 3D looked in 1994. Now she's considered a high school girl, so the place looks in some parts of it familiar, but some parts not because it was a time before she was actually born into. So some things are familiar just because, as with time and space, some things change and some things stay the same. So she was able to navigate the time. She was able to navigate the landscape within that time because some things were familiar to her. One of the things that struck me was that the only way she could get back into the third dimension in her current time and space was through the eclipse. And because May 10th, in real time, in real 3D time, May 10th, 1994 was an annular solar eclipse. Make sure, because I'm still unpacking all of this. Because of that significance of watching these episodes go down and it happening while in sync with my Saturday and Sunday of the annual solar eclipse, June 20th, 21st, 2020, it felt incredibly, ah, what's the word? I can't find a word for it right now. Maybe I'll find a word for it in a moment. But what I knew for certain was that I was giving or being given the opportunity to stockpile on clues and cues that will be useful and have its useful potency for the next 6 months. And I also knew that because my invisible friends know that I am an avid note taker, I honestly suit up to watch films and listen to songs and listen to anything that's created from the right brain hemisphere looking for messages and clues. I honestly look at myself as the Indiana Jones of the Shadow Realm because I know that inside that deep, dark soul are seeds that are helpful if we would just face them or talk about them or be in communion with them. So I don't believe that it was by mistake that the only thing that I wanted to do was tap into the series. I also do not think that it was by mistake that the alignment of when I would be watching what was going down with Bonnie and Damon and all of the chaos that they were involved in, as it lined up with where I am right now in this time and space, in conjunction with all that I've been learning over the last 10 years and all that I plan to do with it over the upcoming however long we're going to be here. I'm almost hesitant to say, for the upcoming 10 years. But I mean, we have stepped into the portal of the wild unknown. So it's here instinctively to shake up all the routines and all of the regularity that we've been shoved into, like this mundane mind, knowing that it is nowhere close to what is capable. So that's my pocket into Storyville. And knowing how it's resonating with me, I know that over the next several weeks there are going to be many, many messages that are going to reveal themselves to me, and I think going to be chasing me to unpack it and translate it. So I would say that if you're interested to get yourself prepared, like honestly, get you a journal and get your writing utensils and your highlighters and anything that I mentioned to you that strikes a chord in you. That is your signal to expand further, go on your own, or tap in with your soul tribe or your curse breaking quest companions to tap into. Because remember, we're dot connecting. So anything that I share and it resonates with you, you pick it up and you share. So I honestly believe that's going to be the lighting of this matrix so that certain things can begin to dissolve on one hand and restructure, reconfigure on another hand. And because it's a trifecta that's happening, we're not living in time and space anymore where it's linear, or at least we're not living to the point where we are figuring that it is. We honestly have a firm understanding of how intermingled these dimensions are becoming. They are interweaving themselves into this grand quilt so that we may have access to and knowledge of access to the physical as well as the non physical spaces, tapping into all that is present. So, we are going to tap into the cards. And so the cards are going to represent if we were making a left into the shopping center. And so one, two, three, four, five cards, five tarot cards, in addition with the three um, angels and ancestor oracles that opened up this conversation. And so we're just going to shop. Even if we're window shopping, we are going to make the choice to make the left and see what the cards, which represents the stores, have in store for us. And we're going to pick and choose, and you may just pop on into the shopping center and realize that there's nothing for you to buy. Or you may hook a left and realize you leave the shopping center with everything so that you may return with not only what you need, but what those that you love need as well. So the first card out is the Ace of Pentacles. And the next card is the Two of Wands, and then the Page of Wands, and then the Page of Swords, and the Hermit. So the Ace of Pentacles. And let me say this. The cards showing up, I'm going to read to you to highlight the energies that may be available to you if you choose them. So if you run into this reading and you get to this point, imagine your shopping cart. Imagine that you are shopping for energies to utilize with, to nurture with, to learn from. So like I said, I think anyone who will bump into this understands the joy of shopping, especially when you have the means to buy whatever it is you want and or need. So the Ace of Pentacles is on the shelf to let you know the energies that are available to you can link you to prosperity, fresh ideas, new energy, and inspiration. The Two of Wands shows up on the shelf and it's offering boldness, authority, originality, your modes to be daring, influential, to take initiative, to seize the moment, to sway away from the crowd and to create your own style. The Page of Wands is on the shelf to offer you new perspective, intellectual pursuits, fun loving occasions, a desire to bring happiness to others, and to not be afraid to face challenges or risks. The Page of Swords is on the shelf to offer rational intellect, recovery from depression, the courage to face problems, the opportunities to identify justice, and the regeneration of courage. The Hermit, which is bringing up the rear, so I'm going to consider it the major arcana caboose, and it is on the shelf, offering us the energies of, once I find it, a time for self reflection, for soul searching, for solitude, for deep understanding, for retreat, as well as gaining perspective toward the outside world. So remember, if you are primed to hook a left into the shopping center of energies and you have said yes to learning from your spiritual experiences and you've said yes to releasing the old and getting you some R&R and you've said yes to becoming and maturing and mastering as the light so that others may connect to you as dots of a new matrix, then you will not only have access to these energies will pursue you from the Ace of Pentacles, the Two of Wands, the Page of Wands, the Page of Swords, and the Hermit. And to me, that's incredible. To me, that is taking advantage of crazy situations that would throw you into a time loop of May 10th, 1994, but will mature you into like this unique being that only the solar eclipse nurturing can offer. So just know when you hook a left into the energetic shopping center, you are buying or you are consuming signature branded high end, real good quality stuff. And I don't know about you, but I know when I have the ability to go shopping and when I come home with all the stuff that I like and I get to try it on, yeah, talk about amazing energy, let alone when I'm able to now go out and mix and mingle with those that I love and I am clothed in that which not only makes me happy, but it allows me to process and offer greater energy than what I was able to do before. Yeah, that's legendary. That's absolutely legendary. So here's to our legacy foundations and what it is that we are going to go and energetically shop for and bag up and brand up. So thanks for hanging with me and I wish you well.